Welcome to the West Ham Voice on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. I'm waiting for my daughter to arrive to take me out for Father's Day. Dad's going to pay, of course, but anyway, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all having a good weekend and welcome back to the channel. Now, look, if you're new to the channel or the first time or you've watched the channel before but yet to become a subscriber, a QR code has appeared in that corner there. To become a subscriber is really easy. All you've got to do is click on that, takes you to the subscription page. Subscription is free of charge. Why not subscribe if you enjoy the content? Anyway, let's crack on. We've been hearing that a significant announcement is about to be made at West Ham this coming week. Amanda Staveley's name is suddenly being linked to the club. Daniel Kretinsky is expected to confirm his increase in his shareholdings. And the more I look at these stories, the more I find myself asking one question. Are they actually separate stories, or are they all pieces of the same jigsaw puzzle? Because I've got to be honest, I don't think any of this is happening by accident. And I also think that perhaps people are asking the wrong questions and reading into the wrong messages. Everybody's asking whether Amanda Staveley is buying West Ham. And I've seen the stories that are out there. Staveley about to buy out the club. I don't personally think that's the actual story here. I think the bigger story might be something far more interesting, because buying West Ham and becoming involved in West Ham are two completely different things. And I think the distinction could become very important over the coming days. Now, before we even talk about Amanda Staveley and her husband, Mehrdad Ghodoussi, let's start with Daniel Kretinsky, because if the reports are correct and his stake rises from 27% to 43%, that changes everything. Not ownership, but power, influence, and perhaps eventually leadership. Now, technically, 43% isn't the majority control, but with the board backing him, apart from, we haven't heard from Sullivan, but with the rest of the board backing him, he will have majority control. And let's be honest, nobody with that level of ownership is sitting quietly in the background. And he's made a lot of noises, Kretinsky, over the past few weeks. Nobody's going to make major strategic decisions without his support. And perhaps what we're witnessing right now is a gradual transition. Because for years, David Sullivan has been the dominant figure at West Ham. Love him or hate him, he's been the face of ownership. But football clubs evolve, and West Ham is definitely evolving. Power changes, and sometimes that happens long before ownership itself officially changes. And perhaps that's where West Ham are heading. Because if Kretinsky becomes the largest and most influential shareholder, then naturally the next question becomes this: what does his vision for West Ham actually look like? And more importantly, who does he want around him to build that vision? Now, we've heard things. He doesn't want to let go of key players. He wants key players to stay at the club. There's talk about new training ground facilities, talk about buying the land that the stadium is on and all that sort of stuff. But he's going to need people to help him do all of that. And this is where Amanda Staveley enters the conversation. Now, whenever Staveley's name appears, people, as I've said, immediately think takeover. That's understandable. We've seen her involvement at Man City. We've seen what's happened at Newcastle. She has relationships throughout football. She understands footballing investment. She understands football ownership structures. And she knows how to bring proper footballing people to the table. But here's the thing. Amanda Staveley's greatest strength has never simply been just writing out, an amount on a check. Her greatest strength has been opening doors, connecting all these investors, structuring deals, building partnerships. So if we've got all these things happening, a new training ground, wanting to buy the land that the stadium's on and all that sort of stuff, then this is where she really can have a major say in how the club moves forward. And that's why I struggle with the idea that she's simply looking to buy the club. Because if Daniel Kretinsky is increasing his influence, why would another group suddenly appear to try and buy the whole club over what he's just taken over? It doesn't fit. It doesn't. And I just hit my, I'm back. It doesn't fit. It doesn't make logical sense. But involvement, that makes a lot more sense, because there are plenty of ways someone can become involved without launching a takeover. And I think that's something supporters might be overlooking with the big news, with the big headlines of Staveley buying out West Ham. Now, I've kind of mentioned this, I've already alluded to it. She could take on an advisory role, she could attract additional investment, she could become part of the wider ownership structure, and she could assist with commercial development because that bit is going to be hit. Because if she's if she can raise capital, get more investment in, given what we're going through, that's going to be really significant for this coming season. And perhaps herself and her husband, Mehrdad Ghodoussi, could even work on, or should be working alongside Kretinsky rather than against him. And if that's the case, then suddenly this becomes a very different conversation. Because let's not forget West Ham's current environment. As I mentioned, relegation has changed everything. The financial hit is going to be significant. Revenues are going to drop, commercial income changes, TV broadcasting income goes down, but the ambition can't change because the expectation is simple. Get back up. Kretinsky has promised to do all he can to get us back up into the Premier League, and hopefully at first attempt. But anyone who follows football knows that's not going to be easy. The Championship is brutal. We've seen clubs with parachute payments struggle. We've seen clubs spend fortunes and still fail, and then they fall foul of PSR. So West Ham have got to get the next period absolutely right. Nuno's going to need support. Recruitment has got to improve. Player sales have got to be managed correctly. The wage bill has got to be controlled. And the club has to navigate PSR rules. Now, PSR is something supporters often hear about without always understanding it. It's taken me a while. People assume that wealthy owners automatically will solve everything, but football doesn't work like that. Owners having money and football clubs having money are two completely different things. Money has to be managed properly within the club structure. Losses have got to be controlled, the books have got to balance, and long-term sustainability really matters, which is why I think fresh expertise may be just as important as fresh money. So if you're going to be losing money in one way, how can you make money in another way? Well, bringing in additional investment, bringing in commercial structures, etc., commercial sponsorship involvement, that's where it becomes quite significant. That's about creating stability, and perhaps this is why Amanda Staveley fits into the whole scheme of things. I've said she brings experience, relationship, footballing knowledge. She understands modern football clubs. There's one thing between her and I think the difference between her and Karen Brady. I've always sort of said, Brady, a business sense, I guess, is good, but she doesn't have a footballing brain. She doesn't understand the footballing side of things, whereas Staveley does. Because let's be honest, the last few years have felt rather reactive, hasn't it? With the ownership and the running of the club by Brady and Sullivan. Managerial changes, recruitment changes, strategy not being clear, no questions over direction, and supporters wanted clarity. And they want to know where the football club is heading. They want to know who's going to be steering this ship over the next, 2, 3, 4 years. And perhaps this week starts to answer some of those questions. Because another thing I find interesting is the timing. The financial year has closed. The transfer window is underway. Plans for next season, I hope, are finalised. And there have been suggestions that some sort of financial announcement is forthcoming. Now, maybe it's simply that Kretinsky has increased his sharehold, and that may be it. And that's major news in itself. But there is additional capital. If additional capital is entering the club, then that is as significant, if not more so. And maybe Amanda Staveley and her husband, Mehrdad Ghodoussi, are becoming involved in not a takeover, but in a different capacity. Now, that's important. I don't think this is going to be a normal week for the football club because too many things seem to be happening at the same time. And that brings me perhaps to the most important point of all. Supporters have asked, who has the ownership of the football club? How is it changing? How can it change? Who's going to run it? Who's going to invest in it? Etc., etc. Now, these responsibilities don't lie with just Kretinsky alone. Having someone like Staveley and her husband involved provides or can start to provide a lot of the answers to those questions. Where Kretinsky provides financial strength, the experienced footballing people in the likes of Staveley and her husband Ghodoussi provide guidance, strategy, long term vision. And if that's the case, then perhaps we're going to start witnessing or the beginning of a completely new chapter at this club. Not necessarily takeover, but transition. And transition over time is important. And that's how I see Staveley being involved in this football club, working alongside Daniel Kretinsky, working alongside him to build the vision of this club, to look at a new stadium, if that's even the potential, to look at buying the land, if that's part of the deal, to look at the new training grounds, etc., etc. It's not just about how much money you invest in the football, in the players. It's about what you invest in the club overall. That's my thoughts. That's my views. Let me know what you think. Do you believe the rumors, the stories coming out that Staveley is about to buy the club? I don't, but I do believe that she'll be involved in some capacity, which may be far more valuable to West Ham United over time. Leave your thoughts, leave your comments. Do hit the like button, hit the bell notification to let you know when I'm next on, and also please hit the hype button because that promotes this video to other viewers on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of this weekend, and I'll see you all soon.